Jake Miller sat alone in the small monitoring station near Jupiter's largest moon. The metal walls around him hummed quietly with the sound of computers and life support systems. Outside the thick windows, space stretched endlessly in all directions. Stars twinkled like tiny diamonds against the black sky. Jake was a communications officer for the Earth Defense Force. His job was simple but important. He watched for asteroids that might hit Earth. He also tracked strange signals from deep space. Most days were quiet. Jake liked it that way. The young man had been stationed here for 18 months. His brown hair was getting longer than military rules allowed, but no one came out this far to check. Jake wore the standard blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force. His rank showed he was just a lieutenant, not very important in the big picture. Jake's small station was part of a larger ship called the Aurora's Dawn. The ship stayed hidden behind Jupiter's moon. Captain Peters and his crew of 12 people lived on the main ship. They came to check on Jake once every few weeks. The rest of the time, Jake was completely alone. Being alone did not bother Jake. He had always been quiet, even as a child. In school, other kids called him strange because he liked to watch and listen more than talk. Jake was very good at noticing patterns. He could see things that other people missed. This skill helped him become excellent at chess. He won many tournaments before joining the military. Jake also had a degree in mathematics. Numbers made sense to him. He could look at long lists of data and find connections that others could not see. The Earth Defense Force thought these skills made him perfect for monitoring duty. They were right, but not in the way they expected. On this particular day, Jake was drinking coffee and reading reports when his computer started beeping. New ships had appeared on his sensors. Jake had seen these ships before. They were not from Earth. The alien ships belonged to something called the Zephyrian Hegemony. Jake had been watching them for over a year now. They came through this area every few months. The ships were huge and beautiful. They looked like silver birds with glowing blue engines. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had built. Jake had learned a lot about these aliens by watching them. The Zephyrians thought they were better than everyone else in the galaxy. They had conquered 12 star systems. Their ships had powerful weapons and energy shields that could stop any attack. They treated other species like insects. The Zephyrians sent scout ships to human space regularly. They wanted to know what weapons Earth had. They counted human ships and studied Earth's defenses. Jake knew they were planning something bad. The aliens clearly did not think humans were worth worrying about. Today, the alien fleet was bigger than usual. Jake counted 30 ships instead of the normal 10. The largest ship was a kilometer long. Its hull was covered in weapon ports and shield generators. Jake had seen this ship before. It belonged to Commander Vextar, one of the Zephyrian military leaders. Jake turned on his recording equipment. He had been documenting every alien visit for 18 months. Most people would have just filed a simple report. Jake was different. He wrote down everything: ship positions, flight patterns, energy readings, communication frequencies. He even noted how long the aliens stayed and which direction they went when they left. The alien ships moved in perfect formation. They flew like they were dancing to music that only they could hear. Every ship stayed exactly the right distance from the others. Their movements were smooth and graceful. Jake could see why they thought they were superior. Their technology and discipline were impressive. Commander Vextar's ship sent out smaller scout vessels. These ships flew closer to human space. They scanned everything with their advanced sensors. Jake watched as they recorded the positions of human patrol ships and defense platforms. The aliens were mapping all of Earth's defenses. Jake knew that his own small station should be invisible to alien sensors. The Aurora's Dawn used special stealth technology. The aliens should not be able to detect them, but Jake was careful anyway. He kept his station's power output low. He did not send any messages that might give away their position. While Jake watched, one of the alien scout ships came very close to his hiding spot. The ship was beautiful up close. Its silver hull reflected starlight like a mirror. Blue energy flowed along lines carved into its surface. The alien ship was twice the size of Jake's entire station. For a moment, Jake worried that the aliens had found him. But the scout ship just flew past. Its crew probably thought this area was empty space. They had no idea that a human was watching them and taking notes. Jake opened his logbook and started writing. He recorded the exact time the aliens arrived. He counted all 30 ships and noted their types. Heavy cruisers, destroyers, and fast attack ships. He measured their energy signatures and weapon configurations. Every detail went into his notes. The young officer had developed his own system for tracking the aliens. He gave each ship type a code number. He drew maps showing their formation patterns. He even timed how long it took them to scan different areas. Other people might think Jake was being too careful, but Jake believed that knowledge was power. As the hours passed, Jake noticed something interesting. The aliens always moved the same way. Their formations followed mathematical patterns. Each ship stayed in its assigned position no matter what happened. Even when they split up to scan different areas, they moved like parts of a machine. Jake had seen this kind of thinking before. It was very logical and efficient, but it was also predictable. If someone studied these patterns long enough, they might be able to guess what the aliens would do next. Jake filed this thought away for later. Commander Vextar's fleet finished their scanning after 6 hours. They had photographed every human ship and defense station in this part of space. Now they knew exactly how weak Earth's defenses were. The aliens formed up again and prepared to leave. Before departing, Commander Vextar's ship sent a message. Jake's computers intercepted and translated it. The message was a report to Zephyrian headquarters. It said that human defenses were pathetically weak and would collapse in hours if attacked. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The aliens were not just exploring anymore. They were planning an invasion. The message mentioned something about clearing, obstacles and expansion, protocols. It was clear that the Zephyrians saw humans as nothing more than annoying insects in their way. The alien fleet jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared. Space became quiet again. Jake was alone with his thoughts and his growing pile of notes. He had 18 months of data about alien movements and behavior, but he was just a lieutenant. Who would listen to him? Jake looked out at the stars and made a decision. He would keep watching and recording everything. Someday his careful observations might help save humanity. The aliens had overlooked the quiet humans sitting alone near Jupiter. That might turn out to be their biggest mistake. 6 months after Jake's last encounter with the alien scouts, terrible news reached Earth. The Zephyrian hegemony had made an official announcement. They declared humanity a minor obstacle that needed to be removed. The aliens were coming to take human space for themselves. The news spread panic across Earth and all human colonies. People had heard stories about the Zephyrians. The aliens had destroyed entire civilizations before. They showed no mercy to species they considered inferior. Humans knew their technology was far behind alien standards. Most people believed the war was already lost. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the main command center on Earth. She was the head of all human military forces. Lisa was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had spent 30 years preparing for this day. Now that it was here, she felt the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders. The reports on Lisa's desk painted a grim picture. Earth had only 50 warships that could fight in space. The Zephyrians were sending 200 ships to attack humanity. Worse yet, human weapons could not even scratch alien shields. Every computer simulation showed the same result. Complete human defeat in less than 12 hours. Lisa called together her best officers and scientists. They needed a miracle and they needed it fast. The alien invasion fleet would arrive in 3 months. That was not much time to develop new weapons or strategies. Dr. Helen Brooks was one of the people Lisa called to help. Helen was an expert on alien technology. She had studied every piece of Zephyrian equipment that humans had ever found. Helen was a short woman with red hair and thick glasses. She spoke quickly when she got excited about science. Captain Ryan Torres also joined the emergency committee. Ryan commanded one of Earth's most powerful warships. He was a good fighter and a smart tactician. Ryan had black hair and dark eyes. He came from a military family and had been preparing for war his whole life. The committee met every day for 2 weeks. They tried everything they could think of. New weapons, better shields, different tactics. Nothing worked. The alien technology was simply too advanced. Human science was centuries behind. During the 3rd week, Admiral Carter made an unusual decision. She ordered all military personnel with special skills to report to the committee. This included people with unusual backgrounds or talents. Lisa was desperate enough to try anything. That was how Jake Miller ended up in the main conference room on Earth. Jake had been recalled from his monitoring station near Jupiter. His commanding officer told him to bring all his reports and data. Jake carried 18 months of careful observations in several thick folders. When Jake walked into the conference room, he felt very small. The room was huge and filled with important people. Admirals, generals, famous scientists, and brilliant engineers. Jake was just a lieutenant. His quiet manner and low rank made him almost invisible among all these powerful leaders. Admiral Carter asked each person to present their ideas. Jake listened as others talked about new weapons and desperate battle plans. Most of the ideas were good, but they all had the same problem. Humans could not match alien technology in time. When Jake's turn came, he stood up nervously. He had never spoken to such important people before. Jake opened his folders and pulled out charts and graphs. He had spent weeks organizing his data for this moment. Jake began by explaining what he had learned about Zephyrian behavior. The aliens always moved in the same patterns. Their formations were mathematically perfect. Each ship had a specific role and position. The aliens never changed their basic tactics. Most of the committee looked bored. They had heard this kind of information before. Alien discipline was famous throughout the galaxy. But Jake was just getting started. Jake pulled out detailed timing charts. He had measured how long alien shields took to recharge after absorbing energy. The shields had a cycle that repeated every 47 seconds. For 3 seconds during each cycle, the shields were weaker while they reset themselves. Dr. Helen Brooks suddenly became very interested. She leaned forward and studied Jake's numbers. Helen had been trying to understand Zephyrian shield technology for years. Jake's timing data was incredibly detailed and accurate. Jake continued his presentation. He showed how alien formations created blind spots in their sensor coverage. He explained how their communication systems had brief delays during complex maneuvers. He had found dozens of small weaknesses that most people would never notice. The room became quiet as people realized what Jake was showing them. The aliens were not invincible. They had weaknesses like any other military force. The problem was that their weaknesses were very small and hard to exploit. Admiral Carter asked Jake how he had gathered all this information. Jake explained his 18 months of careful watching and note-taking. He had observed the aliens during dozens of visits to human space. Each time he had learned something new about their methods. Captain Torres was the first to understand the real value of Jake's work. Ryan asked if Jake could predict what the aliens would do during an actual battle. Jake nodded and pulled out his tactical analysis papers. Jake had studied Zephyrian military doctrine using publicly available information. He combined this with his personal observations to create detailed battle predictions. He could guess how the aliens would react to different human actions. More importantly, he knew when they would be vulnerable to counterattack. Dr. Helen Brooks got excited as she studied Jake's shield timing data. She started calculating whether human weapons could exploit the brief weakness periods. Helen's computer simulations showed promising results. If humans could time their attacks perfectly, they might be able to damage alien ships. Admiral Carter asked Jake to work directly with Dr. Brooks on developing new tactics. Jake agreed, though he was nervous about the responsibility. He had always been just an observer. Now people wanted him to help plan humanity's defense. Over the following weeks, Jake and Helen created what they called the Quiet Protocol. It was a battle plan based entirely on Jake's observations of alien behavior. Instead of trying to match alien strength, the plan would exploit alien predictability. The protocol required perfect timing and coordination. Human ships would have to move in specific patterns at exact moments. They would need to fire their weapons during tiny windows of opportunity. One mistake could ruin the entire plan. Many officers thought the plan was too complex and risky. Captain Torres had serious doubts about trusting humanity's fate to such precise timing. But Admiral Carter supported Jake's ideas. She knew that conventional tactics would definitely fail. At least this plan gave humans a chance. Jake worked day and night to refine the protocol. He calculated exact positions and timing for every human ship. He studied alien psychology to predict how they would respond to unexpected tactics. Jake's quiet nature helped him focus completely on the complex planning. As the invasion fleet drew closer, Jake felt the pressure building. Everyone was counting on his observations being correct. If he had made any mistakes in his 18 months of data collection, humanity would pay the price. Jake double-checked every calculation and reviewed all his notes. The quiet young man who had spent months alone near Jupiter was now at the center of humanity's defense plans. Jake had gone from being overlooked and ignored to holding humanity's fate in his hands. Soon everyone would learn whether careful observation could defeat superior technology. The Zephyrian invasion fleet appeared at the edge of human space like a storm cloud of death. 200 alien warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Pluto. Their hulls gleamed silver in the distant sunlight. Blue energy flowed across their weapons and shields like liquid lightning. Admiral Kethran commanded the invasion from his massive flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath. The ship was 3 kilometers long and bristled with enough firepower to destroy entire planets. Kethran was an old warrior who had conquered 6 star systems for the hegemony. He had never lost a battle. Commander Vexitar served as Kethran's tactical advisor. Vexitar had been studying human defenses for 2 years. He knew exactly how weak Earth's military was. The humans had primitive weapons and no effective shields. Their ships were slow and clumsy compared to Zephyrian technology. The alien fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation. Each ship maintained its exact position relative to the others. Their movement was graceful and coordinated like a deadly dance. Long-range sensors swept ahead, mapping human defensive positions. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter watched the alien approach with growing dread. Her defense fleet consisted of only 50 ships. Each one was precious because humanity could not build replacements quickly. Lisa knew that conventional tactics would lead to quick defeat, but Lisa was not planning to fight conventionally. Jake Miller's quiet protocol was now the official human strategy. Every ship captain had received detailed orders based on Jake's 18 months of alien observations. The plan was complex and risky, but it was humanity's only hope. Captain Ryan Torres commanded the lead human vessel, the Defiant Spirit. Ryan was still not completely sure about the battle plan. It required his ships to act in ways that seemed almost cowardly. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on, humans would appear to run away in panic. Lieutenant Amy Foster served as Ryan's tactical officer. Amy was a young woman with blonde hair and sharp green eyes. She had studied Jake's data for weeks and understood the plan better than most. Amy trusted the mathematics, even if the strategy felt wrong emotionally. Commander Ben Wright was the chief engineer on Ryan's ship. Ben was responsible for the weapon modifications that Dr. Helen Brooks had designed. Based on Jake's shield timing data, human weapons had been changed to fire in specific patterns. These resonance torpedoes were designed to hit alien shields during their weakest moments. Jake himself remained on Earth in the main command center. Banks of computers surrounded him, showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. Jake had calculated the exact timing for each phase of the battle. His quiet voice would guide human forces through the complex maneuvers. Dr. Helen Brooks worked beside Jake, monitoring the technical aspects of their plan. Her weapon modifications were untested in real combat. Helen had run thousands of computer simulations, but actual battle would be different. She nervously checked her calculations one final time. Chief Engineer Carlos Martinez had supervised the weapon modifications on dozens of human ships. Carlos was an older man with gray hair and steady hands. He had worked for days to install Helen's new torpedo systems. Now he could only hope that the modifications would work as designed. The alien fleet reached Mars and began deploying into attack formation. Admiral Kethran was pleased with how smoothly everything was proceeding. Human defenders appeared to be retreating in disorder. Their ships scattered like frightened animals, just as Zephyrian simulations had predicted. Commander Vexitar studied the human ship movements with satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The humans were running toward their inner colonies, probably hoping to make a desperate last stand near Earth. It would not matter. Zephyrian firepower would crush them wherever they chose to fight. But Jake saw something different in the human ship movements. What looked like panicked retreat was actually carefully coordinated positioning. Each human ship was moving to a specific location at a precise time. The apparent chaos was really a complex dance designed to exploit alien predictability. Ryan Torres received his first movement orders from Jake. The instructions seemed strange and counterintuitive. Ryan was told to retreat rapidly, abandoning the outer colonies without a fight. His crew looked confused and worried. This did not feel like proper military tactics. Amy Foster studied her tactical display and began to see the pattern. Human ships were not really running away. They were moving into positions that would give them advantages during the coming battle. Amy started to understand Jake's brilliant strategy. Ben Wright made final checks on the resonance torpedo systems. The weapons looked normal from the outside, but their internal timing mechanisms had been completely rebuilt. Each torpedo was programmed to explode at exactly the right moment to disrupt alien shield cycles. As the human fleet fell back toward Mars, Jake began Phase 2 of his plan. Human ships suddenly changed direction and began moving in seemingly random patterns. To alien observers, it looked like complete confusion. Human commanders appeared to have lost control of their forces. Admiral Kethran ordered his fleet to accelerate. The humans were clearly panicking. This was the perfect time to strike. Kethran wanted to destroy the human fleet before they could reorganize. Quick victory would save time and ammunition. Commander Vextar agreed with his admiral's assessment. Human behavior matched all their intelligence predictions. The inferior species was breaking apart under pressure. Soon, the Zephyrian fleet would be free to claim human worlds for the hegemony. Jake watched the alien formation adjust exactly as he had predicted. The Zephyrians tightened their formation and increased speed. This brought them into the perfect position for Jake's trap. Everything was proceeding according to his calculations. Dr. Helen Brooks monitored energy readings from the approaching alien fleet. Zephyrian shields were operating at full power, cycling through their recharge patterns exactly as Jake had observed. Helen's weapon modifications should be able to exploit the brief weakness periods. Carlos Martinez received reports from all human ships. The resonance torpedo systems were functioning normally. Weapon timing was synchronized across the entire fleet. When Jake gave the command to fire, every human ship would attack at exactly the same moment. The alien fleet reached the optimal position for Jake's plan. Human ships appeared to be scattered and disorganized, but they were actually surrounding the Zephyrian formation from multiple angles. Jake had spent weeks calculating these precise positions. Captain Torres received the preliminary attack order. His ship was to begin the assault in exactly 17 minutes. Ryan felt his heart racing as he prepared for humanity's desperate gamble. Everything depended on Jake's observations being completely accurate. Lieutenant Foster armed the resonance torpedoes and prepared targeting solutions. Amy had memorized the shield timing patterns that Jake had discovered. Her weapons would fire during the 3-second window when alien defenses were weakest. Commander Wright made final power adjustments to ensure perfect weapon timing. Ben knew that even small delays could ruin the entire plan. Human technology was not as precise as alien systems, but it would have to be good enough. Jake studied his tactical display one last time. Every human ship was in position. Alien formations matched his predictions perfectly. The moment of truth was approaching. Soon, everyone would learn whether patient observation could defeat superior technology. Admiral Kethran prepared to order the final assault on human forces. Victory seemed assured. The aliens had better weapons, stronger shields, and more ships. Mathematical superiority guaranteed their success. But Jake Miller had spent 18 months learning that the Zephyrians always did exactly what mathematics predicted. Their strength was also their weakness. Predictability could be exploited by anyone patient enough to study the patterns. The quiet human who had been overlooked and ignored was about to show the galaxy that sometimes the greatest weapon was simply the willingness to watch and learn. The battle began exactly as every Zephyrian computer simulation had predicted. Human ships scattered in apparent panic as the alien fleet advanced in perfect formation. Admiral Kethran watched with satisfaction as his forces prepared to crush humanity's pathetic defenses. Commander Vextar reported from his position on the flagship's bridge. Human resistance was collapsing faster than expected. Their ships were fleeing in all directions without any coordination. Some human vessels had already begun retreating toward Earth's inner colonies. But in Earth's command center, Jake Miller watched a very different battle unfold. What looked like chaos to alien eyes was actually perfect timing. Every human ship was moving to predetermined coordinates. Jake's 18 months of careful observation were about to pay off. Admiral Lisa Carter stood beside Jake, her hands clenched with tension. The next few minutes would determine humanity's fate. Lisa had put everything on the line by trusting Jake's unconventional strategy. If his calculations were wrong, the human race would be extinct by tomorrow. Captain Ryan Torres received Jake's first attack order through his headset. The quiet young man's voice was calm and steady despite the enormous pressure. Ryan was told to reverse course and attack the alien formation's left flank at exactly the right moment. Lieutenant Amy Foster checked her weapon systems one final time. The resonance torpedoes were armed and ready. Amy had practiced the firing sequences hundreds of times. She knew exactly when to pull the trigger for maximum effect against alien shields. Commander Ben Wright monitored the ship's power systems. The weapon modifications were drawing enormous amounts of energy. Ben had to balance power carefully to ensure the torpedoes would fire at precisely the right moment. Jake began counting down the seconds until the first attack phase. His voice carried across the command center as he coordinated 50 human ships spread across millions of kilometers of space. Everything had to happen at exactly the right time. At Jake's signal, Captain Torres ordered his ship to attack. The Defiant Spirit suddenly reversed direction and charged toward the alien formation. To Commander Vextar, it looked like a desperate suicide run by panicked humans. But Amy Foster was following Jake's precise timing calculations. She waited until the alien shields entered their weakness cycle, then fired a full spread of resonance torpedoes. The weapons flew through space toward their targets at incredible speed. The torpedoes struck 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers during the brief moment when their shields were recharging. Instead of bouncing off harmlessly, the weapons penetrated alien defenses and exploded against their hulls. Alien ships that had seemed invincible suddenly burst into flames. Admiral Kethran stared in shock as 3 of his most powerful vessels suffered critical damage in the first 30 seconds of battle. This was impossible. Human weapons were not supposed to be able to penetrate Zephyrian shields. Something was terribly wrong. Commander Vextar frantically checked his tactical displays. The humans had somehow timed their attack perfectly to exploit a weakness in alien defenses. But how could primitive humans understand advanced Zephyrian shield technology? Jake's voice continued to guide human forces with perfect calm. Phase 2 of his plan began as more human ships attacked from different angles. Each group struck at precisely calculated moments when alien formations were most vulnerable. Captain Danny Walsh commanded a squadron of human destroyers. Danny was a young officer with red hair and freckles. He led his ships in a seemingly reckless charge that actually placed them in the perfect position to exploit alien tactical weaknesses. Lieutenant Sarah Kim served as weapons officer on Danny's flagship. Sarah was an expert marksman who could hit targets that other people could not even see. She fired resonance torpedoes with deadly accuracy during the brief windows when alien shields were weak. Commander Pete Johnson managed the technical systems that synchronized human attacks. Pete was a quiet man who understood computers better than most people understood their own families. His precise timing allowed human weapons to strike exactly when they would do the most damage. The alien formation began to show signs of strain as more ships suffered unexpected damage. Admiral Kethran ordered his fleet to tighten formation and increase coordination protocols. This was exactly what Jake had predicted the aliens would do when faced with losses. Dr. Helen Brooks monitored the battle from Earth and smiled grimly. The aliens were responding to stress by becoming more rigid and predictable. Their attempt to maintain perfect discipline was making them even more vulnerable to Jake's tactics. Jake's third attack phase targeted the alien command structure. He had identified which ships contained senior officers by studying their communication patterns during previous observations. Human forces now struck directly at alien leadership vessels. Captain Torres led a coordinated assault on Admiral Kethran's flagship. The massive Sovereign's wrath seemed impossible to damage with human weapons, but Jake had calculated the exact moment when even this mighty vessel would be vulnerable. Amy Foster waited for Jake's signal, then fired every torpedo her ship carried. The weapon struck the alien flagship during a complex fleet realignment maneuver. The Sovereign's wrath shields flickered and failed as resonance torpedoes found their target. Explosions ripped through the alien command ship's hull. Admiral Kethran was thrown to the deck as his vessel shuddered under impacts that should have been impossible. The flagship's main weapons went offline, and several engine compartments were venting atmosphere. Commander Vextar tried to reorganize the alien formation, but Jake's attacks kept coming from unexpected directions. Every time the aliens attempted to adjust their tactics, human forces struck during the brief moments of vulnerability that such changes created. Carlos Martinez received damage reports from across the human fleet. Several ships had been hit by alien return fire, but most were still operational. The resonance torpedo modifications were working exactly as designed. Human weapons were finally able to hurt alien vessels. Jake's fourth attack phase targeted the alien fleet's communication systems. He had learned during his months of observation that Zephyrian ships relied heavily on constant coordination. Disrupting their communications would cause chaos in their rigid formations. Lieutenant Mark Brown commanded a squadron of fast human attack ships. Mark was known for his aggressive flying and willingness to take risks. He led his vessels in high-speed runs that targeted alien communication arrays with surgical precision. Commander Lisa Grant served as Mark's tactical coordinator. Lisa was a brilliant strategist who could analyze complex battle situations in seconds. She identified the most important alien communication nodes and directed human attacks for maximum disruption. The alien fleet began to fall apart as ship-to-ship communication failed. Without constant coordination, Zephyrian vessels could not maintain their perfect formations. Ships that had fought as one unified force suddenly became isolated and vulnerable. Admiral Kethran realized that his forces were being systematically destroyed by what he had thought were primitive humans. The tactical genius behind these attacks understood Zephyrian weaknesses better than some of his own officers did. Jake's final attack phase exploited the complete breakdown of alien coordination. Human ships attacked from all directions simultaneously, targeting damaged vessels that could no longer defend themselves effectively. The alien formation completely collapsed. Commander Vextar watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was torn apart by inferior human technology. 50 human ships had defeated 200 Zephyrian vessels through perfect timing and tactical brilliance. Captain Torres led the final assault on remaining alien command ships. The aliens were trying to retreat, but Jake had predicted their withdrawal routes. Human forces were waiting at every escape vector, ready to continue the devastating attacks. The battle that was supposed to last 12 hours ended in less than 4. The mighty Zephyrian invasion fleet was shattered, with most ships destroyed or crippled. Admiral Kethran's flagship was drifting helplessly, its weapons and engines offline. Jake Miller's quiet voice finally fell silent in the command center. His precise calculations and patient observations had achieved the impossible. Humanity had defeated a technologically superior enemy through careful study and perfect timing. Admiral Carter looked at the young lieutenant with new respect. Jake had saved not just humanity, but had proven that intelligence and preparation could overcome raw technological power. The quiet man who had been overlooked by everyone was now humanity's greatest hero. The silence after battle was almost as shocking as the fighting itself. Floating in space around Mars were the broken remains of what had been the most powerful invasion fleet in Zephyrian history, 200 alien warships, reduced to wreckage and debris in less than 4 hours. Admiral Kethran sat in his damaged command chair, aboard the crippled Sovereigns. Wrath, emergency lights cast strange shadows across the bridge. Half of his crew was dead or wounded. The mighty flagship that had conquered 6 star systems was now a helpless hulk drifting through space. Commander Vexitar worked frantically to restore basic ship systems. The tactical officer who had planned this invasion with such confidence now faced the impossible task of explaining total defeat to his superiors. How could primitive humans have destroyed an advanced Zephyrian fleet? Captain Ryan Torres led the human boarding parties that secured surviving alien vessels. Ryan's Marines moved carefully through damaged alien ships, taking prisoners and gathering intelligence. The humans were still shocked by their overwhelming victory. Lieutenant Amy Foster studied the wreckage of alien technology scattered across the battlefield. The resonance torpedoes had worked even better than Dr. Helen Brooks had predicted. Zephyrian shields, once thought to be impenetrable, now seemed almost fragile. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center trying to understand what had just happened. Her 50 ships had defeated 200 alien vessels without losing a single human vessel. The victory was so complete that it felt like a dream. Jake Miller remained at his console, quietly reviewing the battle data. His 18 months of patient observation had led to humanity's greatest military triumph. But Jake was already thinking about what came next. The war might be over, but the peace would be just as challenging. Dr. Helen Brooks analyzed the technical aspects of their victory. The weapon modifications had exceeded all expectations. More importantly, Jake's understanding of alien psychology had been perfectly accurate. The Zephyrians had reacted exactly as he predicted. Within hours of the battle's end, Admiral Kethran requested a meeting with human leadership. The alien commander wanted to understand how his technologically superior forces had been so completely defeated. His pride and his empire's reputation were in ruins. Admiral Carter agreed to the meeting, but she insisted that Jake be present. The young lieutenant who had designed the winning strategy deserved to be part of any peace negotiations. Jake was nervous about meeting alien leaders, but he agreed to attend. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station near Mars. Admiral Kethran arrived with a small escort of surviving officers. Commander Vexistar accompanied his admiral, still struggling to understand their devastating defeat. Jake walked into the meeting room feeling very small. The alien leaders were tall and imposing, with silver skin and glowing blue eyes. Their uniforms were elegant and covered with medals from previous conquests. Jake wore his simple lieutenant's uniform and carried a folder of his observation notes. Admiral Kethran studied the humans with curious eyes. He had expected to meet famous generals and brilliant scientists. Instead, he found himself looking at a quiet young man who seemed almost invisible among the other human officials. Commander Vextar suddenly recognized Jake from their previous encounter near Jupiter. This was the same communications officer he had dismissed as insignificant 18 months earlier. The alien tactical officer felt a chill as he realized the implications. Admiral Carter introduced Jake as the architect of humanity's victory. She explained how the young lieutenant had spent months studying alien behavior and identifying weaknesses that no one else had noticed. Jake's patient observations had made their triumph possible. Admiral Kethran demanded to see Jake's analysis of Zephyrian tactics. The alien commander wanted to understand how humans had gained such detailed knowledge of advanced alien military doctrine. Jake nervously opened his folders and began explaining his work. Jake showed the aliens his careful records of their patrol patterns, formation structures, and communication protocols. He had documented everything in precise detail. Shield timing cycles, weapon recharge rates, tactical response patterns. 18 months of dedicated observation. Commander Vextar stared at Jake's notes in amazement. The human had learned things about Zephyrian military operations that some alien officers did not know. His analysis was more complete than many official military studies. Dr. Helen Brooks joined the presentation to explain the technical aspects of their victory. She showed how Jake's timing data had enabled the development of weapons that could penetrate alien shields. Science had turned careful observation into devastating military advantage. Admiral Kethran began to understand the scope of his defeat. The humans had not won through superior technology or numbers. They had achieved victory by studying their enemy more carefully than anyone thought possible. Patient intelligence had overcome technological superiority. Jake explained his analysis of Zephyrian psychology. The aliens were excellent at perfecting their methods, but they never changed their basic approaches. Their strength came from discipline and consistency, but these same qualities made them predictable to anyone willing to study their patterns. Commander Vextar realized that the Zephyrian Empire's greatest weakness was its inflexibility. For thousands of years, they had conquered other species through technological advantage alone. They had never faced an enemy that took the time to truly understand their methods. Admiral Carter presented the human terms for peace. Earth wanted diplomatic recognition as an equal partner, rather than a conquered territory. Humans offered to share their analytical methods in exchange for alien technological knowledge. Both species could benefit from cooperation. Admiral Kethran found himself in an impossible position. His invasion had failed completely, but the humans were offering partnership instead of demanding surrender. The alien commander had never encountered such an unusual response to military victory. Jake suggested that the current conflict had happened because both species misunderstood each other. Aliens saw humans as primitive and weak. Humans feared aliens as aggressive conquerors. Better communication might prevent future wars. Dr. Brooks proposed joint research projects that would benefit both civilizations. Human creativity and analytical skills could combine with alien technology and engineering knowledge. Together, they might solve problems that neither species could handle alone. Over the following weeks, negotiations continued between human and alien representatives. Jake found himself serving as a translator, helping each side understand the other's perspective. His quiet manner and analytical mind made him perfect for diplomatic work. The final peace treaty recognized humanity as an equal member of the galactic community. The Zephyrian Empire agreed to abandon its expansion into human space. Both species would work together on scientific research and cultural exchange programs. Jake was offered a position as Earth's first ambassador to the Zephyrian capital world. The young man who had spent months alone near Jupiter would now represent humanity to an entire alien civilization. Jake accepted the responsibility with his characteristic quiet determination. Admiral Kethran returned to the Zephyrian homeworld to explain his defeat to the ruling council. His report would force the entire empire to reconsider their approach to other species. Military superiority was not enough if the enemy understood your weaknesses better than you did. Commander Vextar became an advocate for studying human analytical methods. He argued that the Zephyrian military needed to learn from their defeat. Predictability had become a liability in a galaxy where other species might be watching and learning. Jake Miller prepared for his new role as ambassador. He would continue doing what he had always done best, watching, listening, and trying to understand. But now his observations would build bridges between species instead of planning their defeat. The quiet human who had been overlooked by alien scouts 18 months earlier was now the foundation of a new era in galactic politics. Jake had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon was simply the willingness to pay attention and learn from what you observed. As Jake prepared to leave for the alien capital, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He had started as an insignificant communications officer sitting alone in space. Now he was humanity's voice in a vast galactic community. The Zephyrians had overlooked the quiet human, dismissing him as unimportant. That mistake had cost them their fleet and their empire's reputation. But it had also taught both species a valuable lesson about the power of understanding over the power of force.